Everybody. Okay, so off to a little late start there. I have to claim I think I committed the sin of hubris. I told Olivia that we were ahead of schedule and everything was working perfectly 7 minutes before broadcast, and of course then everything went pants. I'll say everything went pants. I think that's a correct British phrasing in honor of Olivia. So listen. Thanks for joining us. This is our double header tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed Matt Piper. I caught a little bit of it while I was setting up, and it was pretty cool. And I hope you guys learned some stuff that you can do. It's amazing. He just smacks on a metal bowl, and next thing you know, he's playing like the gamelan or the dulcimer, and the ways that you can just make a sound that's sitting around you and turn it into something that sounds very expensive and fancy and very unattainable is worth doing. A couple of things of protocol, just for people who are new to joining us here. What helps me out, if you've got a question for Olivia tonight, throw the word question in front of your question in the chat, and that'll help my eyes kind of hone in on it. So all capital letters, question. And the other thing is that, as you saw in the beginning of the broadcast, we're playing music that you guys are making. This is Music Making Month. It's about you guys and the music you're making, and I want to hear the music you're making, and I want to play it on my broadcasts. So if you tweet us at #MMMPropSongs, or you post us a message on our Facebook wall, we'll check it out. And I'm picking from the submissions I'm getting every day, and I'm playing them in the broadcast. So please send those on over, because they're fun. I'm hearing a lot of really great music, and I may not even have enough to more than I have to play in my broadcast, but I'm just adding to my own library at this point. It's a selfish endeavor. So, anyway, I'm going to bring on our guest tonight because I'm really excited to have her here. Her name is Olivia Broadfield. She is a songwriter from the UK, and she has, she's got her one, nod Olivia off camera if I'm correct in this, you've got your one album out currently, and second album in the works, pretty far along?
It's due out 20th of June.
Okay, you guys can talk to us here. Let's just bring her on.
Oh.
This is Olivia Broadfield. Hey, say hello to the world.
Hello, world.
So it's due out when?
It's due out 20th of June.
20th of June. Okay. So the album then is done. I mean, maybe something people don't even realize is that there's about at least a 3-month lead time from the time that you finish the album to the time it actually is released?
It felt like about 5 years maybe at one point. But yeah, it has to have a bit of a setup period. So yeah, it gets finished quite a bit in advance, and then you have like 2-3 months to kind of do everything, publicity, etc. So yeah, I've heard it. It's old news to me, but not to anybody else. What
is that like for you? I mean, you must be sort of just chomping at the bit to get it out, right?
Yeah, it's an odd one because it's really different from album one. So you're kind of like, oh, I hope other people like it, which is frightening. So yeah, chomping at the bit, and also a bit like, oh no, just leave it. Leave no one listening to it so no one can hate it. So a bit of both, right. You know. The
unknown is better than known rejection.
Can I just say, I'm also looking at the questions. I shouldn't do that, should I? Because I'm like, oh look here, drama keys. What interface is that? You see, look, I'm doing your job now, Ryan.
Oh, you could do that if you see anything you want to ask.
What audio interface does she use with that Rode mic? Drama keys. I use a Focusrite Sapphire Pro 24.
See, you don't even need me. I'll just see ya.
Go on then. Anyone else got a question? They're mocking you for sounding British. That's always good.
I sounded British? You know what, actually, if I may make an off-topic personal aside, when I lived in England 5 years, I really didn't want to become Madonna. That was the no good thing to do. But I did changed the way I asked questions. My inflection changed because I just noticed that if I asked it in the American inflection, I had to repeat it. And if I asked it in the British way, they understood my question. So, but I didn't change my accent. That was different. Just inflection. Okay. Anyway, so I'm sorry. I won't digress into myself. Tell us about yourself. How did you get started? When did you get started? Tell us about your music. We want to know.
Oh, I hate that. Tell me about yourself. I'm like, how young do I start? Well, I've always kind of been music-y, if that's a word. Musical. There you go. That's the word, musical. And I, after a brief flirtation with Latin at university, I then went and studied music and then left. And I think just refused to get a 9-to-5 job. And in doing so, stumbled my way through various jobs that involved music, kind of, in one way or another. And then when I moved into the house that I live in now, I set up a studio and was very, green around the gills and just buying stuff off eBay and had no idea if it was the right thing. It all plugged in, it all played, so that was fine for me. And then that was 5 years ago. So the first album came out, had quite a bit of success, and then I signed with Vagrant and released a licensed record to them. And yeah, things have been going very well. I've got new publishers and the record's coming out. We've had a bunch of stuff on TV. I've worked with some lovely people. I know you'll ask me about them later. But yeah, it was kind of that. It was a bit of a case. I started using, obviously, I'm going to have to say Reason a lot, right?
So you don't have to.
I had
but if you
Reason.
Used it.
I did use it, so I can talk about it. I had Reason. It was old school. It was 1.5 or something. And so I think I made the first album with that. And, I started off and it was a bit of a kind of experiment. And after I had about 5 or 6 tracks together, I started sending them to, music supervisors and people. And when they came back and said, oh, you're actually good. And I was like, oh, am I? Okay, brilliant. Because I didn't have any idea what I was doing. And once I kind of knew there was a market for it, I think it focused me. And that's how the first album kind of then developed and,
Did it change out. Your writing? I mean, did you start thinking, what can I write that they will like versus when you were working just for your own enjoyment?
No, I don't think so. I mean, using Reason did change, I guess, the way that I wrote, because when you are kind of just a craft singer-songwriter, you quite often sit down with a guitar or sit down at the piano, which then makes everything driven very kind of chordally or melodically. Whereas when you sit down with Reason, I wasn't so great at programming, so I would just use all the loops and stuff in Dr. X. And quite often I had one song, Lost in You, and I found this one loop that was like a really strong tom beat. And then that, literally, all I put up in the session was that. That's all I had, I think. And then that started kind of riffing their melodies in my head. And then I was putting down little chord bits. And so it sometimes makes you approach songs from a different angle. Ultimately, does that then mean you end up with a different song? I don't know. But I guess it's because you're doing it a bit more as you go, rather than having here's a song I wrote on guitar, and now I'm going to try and produce it. You tend to find that I had this, and then there's a little cool little bit there, and then that would make the melody do this, and so it shifts it a little, but
right, just kind of even if it just knocks you out of your usual ways of working.
Oh, definitely.
We got questions coming in from the chat room, so I'm gonna let them run my agenda here and get their questions out. So just first of all, a technical question. Drama Keys wants to know: is your current album, or I guess he might even mean your second album that's about to come out, was it recorded with the same mic and interface?
It wasn't, only because I've only just currently got this. They were kind of Christmas presents from lovely people in my life, the mic and the Focusrite. So what I actually did was I hired a bunch of mics from a company down in London that had proper lovely 1940s. What did we use in the end? They kept kind of exploding on us and blowing up. So I think by the end of it, we had about 7 mics. We used, now I'm not going to be able to think of it. It's a really lovely, iconic valve mic, German made, I think, or Swiss made, and it looked kind of
Neumann?
Yes, I think we may have had a Neumann.
Microtech FL or Telefunken. Not that it really
there you go.
matters.
Thank you. It was Neumann U47. That's what it was.
All right.
There you go. Thank you.
For the win.
So that was what we used on most of it. We were also, I think then the company that I used felt bad everything was exploding, so they did send us lots. They sent us an M49 as well, which is like a huge mic. And
I think they actually sent that to you because it has a less likelihood of exploding.
Okay.
They were just protecting their own investment.
And I think we had a C12 at one point. That was what I wanted to use, but they were the ones that kept exploding. So we ended up using, I think we used a C24 as a vocal mic, which was kind of odd, but I think we used that as well. So.
Very cool. Well, M1 Check has a question that I think is a great question. We could probably talk the whole evening on it, really. But just to get your thoughts on it, he says, any ideas on how to break through writer's block? And I imagine this is something you deal with daily. Or maybe not. Maybe you're gifted.
No, it's one of those. And people ask that. I don't know if I have... I think writer's block isn't necessarily like a block. It's just you're writing bad songs, you know? And I think I always say it's a bit like a sponge. You have to kind of squeeze the bad stuff out as well before you can kind of get the good songs. So probably what I do rather than having writer's block is just write 4 bad songs for every 1 good song. Or even if you don't write a whole bad song, you kind of get the bad stuff out and appreciate, oh, I've written that, but it's not so great. And then don't beat yourself up about it, leave it, and you find that then the good stuff rises to the top. That pressure, it's like if you know, like when you're at a party and you meet someone and you're like, oh, for God, I can't even remember their name. You know, and all night you're going, oh, God, how am I getting through this night without remembering their name? And the more pressure you put on yourself, the more you're like, no, seriously, what is her name? Like Xavier? No one's called Xavier. Why have I said that? You know, and then you go home and you're like, oh, sodding Steve. His name's Steve. And when you don't put pressure on yourself, you always get the answer. So I think with songwriting, it's similar. Relax. You know, nothing was ever good because you kind of like squeezed yourself to do it. So it is that, without sounding too hippie-ish, write the bad stuff and don't beat yourself up that it's bad, because everything is everybody writes bad stuff. You know, no one is finely honed enough as a songwriter to just write good stuff. So that's how I get through it.
So the key to it's not really writer's block so much as it is just self-love without sounding too, Dr. Phil about it. Non-judgment.
Yeah, non-judgment, because even, sometimes even those things that you wrote that you think were awful then kind of come back round, and sometimes you end up using them. Sometimes think, actually, that bit wasn't so awful. Maybe I was just being really critical that day, and maybe I can change that a bit, and then it maybe is this. I've written one of the songs from the first album, one that was kind of biggest. That's a weird word to use because I don't know how big it was. Was a song called Don't Cry, and in its final format, the verse became the chorus. There was this whole pre-chorus bit that never existed. It shapes, and as it started off, it wasn't great. As it ended up, it was great. So sometimes it's just playing with what you have. You might have a couple of the pieces, but not all of it. And I think it's experimenting and, like you said, not self-love,
it's almost
but
even
just
not cutting the idea off before it's had a chance to mature.
Yeah, just kind of putting it there and go, okay, not today. That's a bit crap today. It might not be crap tomorrow. So that's what I say. So whoever asks that, just go easy on yourself.
As a personal aside,
have a cup of tea and some sort of scone, and then have a go again.
All right, there you go. The Olivia Broadfield School of Writer's Block. Is it scone, not scone?
Oh, it depends where you're from.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, listen, so there was another question up in the chat a while back that I think something I definitely wanted to talk to you about anyway, which is they asked, how did you know who to send your demos to? And that's no small issue, right? You can't just flood demos out to every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the LA 411.
I did use that website. Yes and no. I mean, I don't think as many writers contact people as much as you think. I know within the music scene I used to be in near where I live, a lot of people did genuinely expect that someone was just going to come to a gig one day and discover them. And I was just like, seriously, we live in a crap town. Who's coming here? But I don't know. I don't think it's about the number that you send, but at the same time it is. I have contacted, it must be, and this is not even exaggerating, you must be getting into the thousands with the different people I've contacted. But then you have to kind of know that you're contacting people from all walks of life. All you do when you go on a publisher's website or a record label is no unsolicited demos, and like, well, what does that mean? And I find that a good way now, I mean, Facebook, is it personal or is it for networking? And quite often when you click on people, they do say, yeah, it's for networking. And I know music supervisors who will put up on their statuses, oh, I'm looking for a song that's kind of like this. I've got $1,000. Does anybody know of anything? And it does become a kind of working forum. So I don't think it's wrong, and probably there's going to be lots of people in the industry that come and shout at me for saying this. I don't think it's wrong that if you find an A&R guy's name at a label or a publisher and you Google him in Facebook and find him, I personally, but I have no shame, don't think it's wrong to then contact them and say, hey, look, maybe I shouldn't be contacting you through here. I am aware of that. But, if you have a moment, and just be polite. I think just being polite and kind of non-pushy, not desperate, not pushy. I mean, I've heard that from labels that, and people that I've worked with. Oh, God, some people just are so egotistical or so desperate that it just instantly puts you off. I think an element of, hi, it would be cool if you could do this. It would be cool if something did happen. But equally, I'm fine with where I'm at, and it would just be a bonus. And I think then it's like dating. Then they're like, oh my God, she's not completely desperate. Maybe she is okay. And then they do. I'm surprised at the number of people who will reply to me. And I just think, oh God, I didn't think anyone would reply. So it's persistence. It's persistence.
Are you literally like, to find the music supervisor, are you literally like watching the credits on TV and going, oh, okay, that's the name? Or IMDb?
Yeah, it's kind of a case. I mean, you get to realize that there's probably 50 music supervisors that do a lot of stuff, and particularly it shows like MTV, which is where I had a lot of initial success. Once it's in like the MTV awareness, then it's they pass it amongst each other, pass it amongst all the music coordinators, and they pass it to all the different shows, and it kind of then gets the ball rolling. But literally I'm talking going on IMDb and finding the music supervisor. I mean, we all know that Alex Patsavas is like the music supervisor, and you all know that no one can get hold of her. So maybe don't contact her. But you,
to those of you who don't know, she is the music supervisor for Grey's Anatomy and now just about everything else. Is it fair to say?
Yeah. Gossip Girl, Private Practice.
I think she kind of came to prominence through Grey's Anatomy, right? I mean, there were some very key placements that broke a lot of artists through Grey's Anatomy, and now she just became the most wanted person in Hollywood, at least for musicians.
I think she did the OC, so I think it kind of started. Was the OC pre-Grey's? I don't know, but
it was. But I think that at least she hit critical mass with Grey's.
I think, I mean, I've seen someone's written something about Imogen Heap. When Imogen Heap had hide and seek in that, is it bad to admit I watched the OC? Anyway, in that gunshot scene, that then Saturday Night Live just mocked. That scene, I was a big Frou fan, but then they kind of dropped out my, out of the, my radar when I think they got dropped or they left their label or whatever. And then hearing that, I was like, oh my God, that song's great. And even I had to kind of go, oh my God, it's Imogen Heap from Frou. And that was shows like that were very key. There are still shows like that, a lot of shows, Gossip Girl and Vampire Diaries, and all these shows have a lot of music that is a great place to get it heard. So I can't remember what the original question was.
Well, but the licensing topic is something that I think is no small issue for musicians nowadays. And I don't know how much the people out there, I'm sure there's people out there watching that do know, but then there's also people that probably have a somewhat traditional view of the pursuit as a record deal. And that's the path, as a musician coming up, that's the path you're on. But it's almost like the pursuit is a film placement, the pursuit is a TV placement, and that can have far greater impact on reaching people and if financially your income as a musician.
Financially, I mean, I'm without being horribly crude and talking about money, everyone buys I say everyone. If you're lucky, people will buy your music. It's an unknown concept on iTunes. iTunes take 40% of what you see things get sold for. So, if you sell an album for Easy Mass for $10, then only 60, $6 of those dollars are coming through to a label or whoever you're working with. If you get half of that, you're extremely lucky. So, I've had syncs where, in essence, I've, sold 10,000 units, like overnight, just by getting a sync. So you then think, okay, well, God, 95% of releases only sell, less than 5,000 records or something. So if I just sold 10,000 overnight by getting something on a TV show, then brilliant. And it really is, that's why publishers are surviving and labels are struggling, because publishers obviously have that market, have the sync market and have the licensing market. And it really, a lot of artists will turn their nose up and say, I'm not writing for that. I don't want my music on that. And I've heard of people turn down £500,000 because I don't want to have my song on MasterCard. I mean, I'm just like, £500,000? I don't understand artists.
You could pay off your MasterCard with that.
Exactly. I don't understand people that get into music and then get a bit hoity-toity about it. Do you want to make a living out of music, or do you want to make it difficult for yourself? And I have no shame. I just had my music on like an ice cream ad and like dog food commercial. So I have no shame about saying, well, hey, if you're going to pay me and it means that I can sit here and make albums all day long, then go for it. I'll write you a 30-second ditty for a dog food commercial. So right. That's where I'm at.
There's a couple people asking Imogen Heap related questions. First of all, Clay Day wants to know, did you write the lyrics for Speeding Cars?
No, I didn't. I wish I had, but no, I didn't. I just want to line like, yeah, that was me. Aren't they great? No, it wasn't me.
All right. You can put that on your Wikipedia next to the One Tree Hill placement that never existed. But related to that, I want to talk to you about Guy Sigsworth, because I think it's got to be somewhat of a dream for you, or was at the time. You were very inspired by Frou, and Guy Sigsworth was one half of Frou, and you ended up working with him on your album. How did that come about?
It's one of those things where the world gets like frighteningly small. I mean, yes, I was a huge Frou fan. I think because it was one of those albums that nothing really sounded like that back in 2002. That's my maybe wrong knowledge
about that
when that came out. And so I was a huge fan of theirs. And then obviously when Imogen Heap's album came out, was a huge fan of that, because obviously it was quite similar in sound. And at that time I was doing music promotion. Like I said, I did everything that involved music basically. So I was doing music nights and festivals and stuff as a booker and programmer, and I had booked a band called Tempo Shark, who are a London-based band, and the lead singer had worked with Guy Sigsworth, and him and I kind of became, friendly and used to exchange kind of emails and texts about what each other was doing. And I think I sent Rob like the album or something, or a few tracks, and then out of nowhere he just said, I sent your stuff to like a bunch of people and told them to check you out. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet of you. And then I saw on like my on where I had it available to buy, I think it was just like a little EP thing I had out at that stage because the album wasn't out, and Guy Sigsworth had bought one, and I was like, no. No way. And I think I wrote to Rob, was like, was Guy Sigsworth one of the people you told? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, okay. So then, there's Guy Sigsworth and his email address, and he's just gone and bought this. And so I wrote to him, and for a long time it was just oh my God, I love you. You know, I've loved everything. And he did a review of the first, there was like a first version of the first album and then a version when I licensed it to Vagrant. And so he'd reviewed it the first time round, and then when it was being re-released, I thought, sod it, I'll just ask him. And I was like, Guy, I don't suppose, like looking down all a bit shy and awkward, I don't suppose like maybe you'd like to like produce like some songs, like a song. And he said yes. And then I had like a little party in my head, and he did Crashing Down for the album, and it was so like, he's just so lovely. And we chat, and he's just such a sweet guy. And then he would be telling like these, oh, so anyway, I was working with Britney. And I'm like, and now you're working with me. Oh dear.
Right. Guy is able to refer to his past work with one name. You know, I've worked with Britney, I've worked with Bjork, I've worked with
Bjork,
Alanis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not too many people that can run through their resume and first names only, and we all know who they're talking
as
about.
Well, he did.
Yeah, Seal.
Yeah. So he was, you know, that was hugely exciting, and it was love. I think that's where I learned as well that he was just so down to earth, and he could have been an arsehole, you know, because of all the people he's worked with, he could have just been one of those producers who is limousined round, but he wasn't. And I kid you not, the only thing he took from me for doing the song, I sent him an Easter cake. It was Easter. He was working on my song on Easter Sunday, and I remember I sent him a cake and decorated a cake for him, and that was it. And I know wow. Vagrant were kind of like, what? You haven't had to pay him up front? And I was like, no, I just gave him a cake. So yeah, no one ever worked for me. All I'll pay you in is like baked goods.
Well, wait till you taste the cake, though.
Well, exactly.
Before you decide. Yep. But it sounds to me like a lot of your success has come through just the sheer audacity of, you know, I'll just try it. It's like, you know, I got a date with the coolest guy in school because I just asked him.
Well, you have to have that. You will get knocked back. I did read reviews on my album. I think someone called it Sonic Wallpaper. But even then I went, well, I went, I guess it's a bit like that. You know, it's kind of something you can put on and listen to it or not listen to it. So I think you have to have a kind of humour and a preparation that you will contact X amount of people and X% of those will knock you back. But equally, you may get that gem who says yes, and then you can say to people, so I'm working with this person, or this person likes me. And you do have to just be a bit fearless, I think, and a bit pushy. And try and not offend people.
We've got a question from Eric to Sachs. He wants to know, what's your opinion on copywriting? And I don't know if he means copyright law or the process of copywriting. Eric, if you want to...
question. Can Eric, divulge a little more, because I don't quite know what angle to take on that one.
I wonder if he's talking about the debate of Creative Commons versus... Oh, okay, wait, no. Here we go. Copying before sending demos.
Oh, right, okay. So there's lots of laws and rules about things. My sister is a solicitor, and she's tried to explain this to me, and my manager's also a lawyer, and he's tried to explain it to me. In essence, when you create something, I think it's called like IP law. It's like intellectual property. It's yours. When you write it, it's yours. And I guess in this day and age, it's a little easier to show the date of things. You know, if you write something and you're using Reason or whatever, you hit save as, and you don't have any control on when that file date is named and saved. So copywriting, if you're worried about people are going to rip you off, or you're going to send it to a label and they'll go, oh my God, this guy's great, let's just use this. I feel that we're in a market where it just doesn't happen. I remember sending CDs of myself to myself by like registered post, because that was an old school way of copywriting something. If you're with, basically, if you're with the PRS or ASCAP or BMI or whatever the other, you know, collection agencies are and writers agencies are, if you're registering your tracks with with the collection agencies and the writing, affiliations, then I think you're kind of on safe ground. If that's what he's talking about, like, I don't want to get ripped off, you're on safe ground if you do that.
I see.